I wish I could whistle that. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today I will be talking about the much anticipated Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I am very excited to talk about this because I am a huge Hunger Games fan. And as soon as the book of The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes was announced, I had it on my list to purchase. I bought it. I read some of it. And then I moved. So I haven't finished the book. I feel so much, it's not even guilt, it's like pain. I feel pained that I haven't finished reading the book, and especially because I've now seen the movie before seeing the book. So spoiler warning for both the book and the movie, because I know things from the book that aren't in the movie, and I now know things from the movie that I haven't gotten to yet in the books. So I'll be bouncing around kind of here and there. I'll let you know if I recall specifically that something is book related and isn't in the movie. Me reading the book, at least part of it, has affected my view of the movie. I know that for a fact because I went with a friend, and as soon as it was over and I turned to her and was like, "So what do you think?" And she gave her opinion, my first thought was, yeah, the whole first half of the movie, I was like, where's this? Where's that? Well, like, what are they doing? So let me start off by saying, I think that the movie could have benefited from being split into two movies as opposed to just being in one. And at the time of Mockingjays release, I didn't feel that way. I think afterward, like, is a big book, you kind of needed to split it into two, but I think it covers so much, not only time, but character growth with Coriolanus Snow, that it would have benefited from being two movies instead of one. And I can think of a very, very good place for it to have split. I'll get to that later. So it takes place 64 years prior to the first Hunger Games book/movie. It takes place in the year of the 10th Hunger Games, and it follows Coriolanus Snow, and we kind of see his transformation into becoming the person that is President Snow. It's a villain origin story, so it's kind of gonna deal with those criticisms of like, who's asking for this? Why do we care about how he got here? He's done all these horrible things. It's not going to make me feel any different about him, kind of thing. I'll address that a little bit later too. I think one versus the other had a more successful time, the book versus the movie, had a more successful time kind of threading that needle. But the story starts with Coriolanus going to the reaping. So their family is poor. His father's dead. His mother has also passed on prior to his dad's death. It's him, his grandmam, and Tigress, who is his cousin. If you remember that name, big brain, because that character has showed up in the series before. He's going to the reaping, and he doesn't have the best clothes, but because it's the capital, your appearance is such a huge part of who you are and your status as a capital citizen. So Tigress, who is in fashion, decides to make Coriolanus this beautiful shirt. She finds one of his father's old dress shirts, convinces the person that she's doing an internship with to bleach her curtains so that she can throw in the shirt with the curtains and bleach it. And in the book, she like uses marigolds to dye it a kind of cream. That's not explicitly stated in the movie, but it's, you know, it's not a huge detail. And she uses tesserae cubes as little buttons. And it's a nice looking shirt, you know. He gets ready, puts his little vest on, he goes to school, and they have the reaping. But there's a twist. The dean, Casca Highbottom, is informing the students, 24 of whom have been selected to be in this special position to potentially receive the Plinth Award, which is what they think is happening. One of the students in this 24, his name is Sejanus Plinth, whose father was a person from District 2, so Sejanus is from District 2, who helped end the war. Basically, he got rich and has a scholarship set up in his name for the students to go to university. So the Plinth Award is very prestigious. Nobody really likes him, Mr. Plinth, and by association to Janus either, because they're not capital, they're district. However, Coriolanus needs this money to be able to go to university, but he can't tell anybody that because, you know, he's trying to keep up appearances, that the Snows are as rich and powerful as they've always been. So Dean Highbottom informs them that no one's getting the Plinth Award that day, actually, and the Plinth Award is not going to be based on grades anymore, but by performance as a mentor in the 10th Hunger Games. So each student of the 24 is given a tribute from the Reaping to mentor. This is the first time this has ever happened because people in the capital aren't watching the games anymore. So Coriolanus gets stuck with the girl from District 12, who everyone assumes is the worst candidate to possibly have. Like, this is the worst tribute ever and he's going to lose. He was projected to win the Plinth Award, but now, you know, he's going to lose because blah, 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 blah. But Dean Highbottom says it's not so much about winning the games as it is about making these tributes a spectacle. Keep that in mind. The head game maker and the woman who has decided to implement these rules is Dr. Gall. She is a little bit crazy. She's played by Viola Davis, who just, it's so great. I would love to see her in more roles like this. She just looks so deliciously devious. It's beautiful. So the tributes come to the capital. Coriolanus decides to go and meet his tribute at the train, where he quickly finds himself in a sticky situation because he jumps into the cart with the rest of the tributes, almost gets attacked, and then gets promptly dumped into the zoo, which is where the tributes are being held this year. Remember, this is 64 years prior to the initial Hunger Games that we are accustomed to seeing. So there's none of the glitz and glamour yet. It's very bare bones, just kind of throwing a bunch of kids in an arena and making them kill each other. At this point, there's no attraction to the games for anyone. The districts aren't even watching it, and the capital is like, this is gross, why? And we don't care. So he kind of gets in trouble for doing that. He gets stuck in the zoo, has to be, you know, the peacekeepers have to come and get him out. But his tribute kind of wins some favor and some attention from the capital and from Casca Highbottom and Dr. Gall, which helps Coriolanus in the future and gives him leverage to kind of implement or suggest some things to Dr. Gall to increase his ability to help Lucy Greybeard, his tribute, in the arena eventually. He suggests that they be allowed to place bets on the tribute's odds of winning, and that they be allowed to sponsor and gift the tribute's mentors with the money to buy them water and, you know, supplies for in the arena. Dr. Gall accepts these suggestions and implements as many as she can into the 10th Hunger Games. So Coriolanus is now allowed to give his tribute food, bring them food every time they meet, and they're able to give gifts in the arena. Drama happens. There's an attack that they claim came from the districts on the arena while the tributes and the mentors are exploring the arena for the first time so that the tributes can see it. And people are killed. Tributes are killed. At some point, some students are killed. So already Lucy Gray has a better chance of winning the Hunger Games because there's less tributes and her mentor happens to be desperate to win. So cut to, you know, shenanigans. She does win. Spoilers. She does so because Coriolanus cheats, gives her an advantage. He gives her his mother's makeup compact filled with rat poison, which kills at least 2 tributes. Dr. Gall's the person who kind of created all of the mutts that we see later on, Jabberjays and the Tracker Jackers and such. For this game, she's created rainbow-colored snakes that will viciously attack you and kill you if they don't recognize your scent. So, at some point in their exchanges, Coriolanus gave Lucy Gray his handkerchief to wipe her mouth, hold the food, whatever. She's touched it. Her scent is now on the handkerchief. He has that handkerchief when he realizes Dr. Gall is going to release these snakes into the arena and probably kill all of the rest of the tributes that are in the arena. So he slips the handkerchief into the tank with the snakes so Lucy Gray survives and the snakes kill everyone else. That's how she wins, essentially. Casca Highbottom knew he was cheating. And I think Dr. Gall did too. I think Casca Highbottom realized before she did because he knew Coriolanus' parents. So he recognized his mother's compact. So his punishment is to go be a peacekeeper, and they're sending him to District 8. He bribes the person who's making the assignments and gets sent to District 12 so that he can hopefully see Lucy Gray again. They find each other again. He's training, he's peacekeeper. There's a lot more of that in the book than there is in the movie. It's in this time where we started dipping into things that are past my knowledge of the book. They kind of have a little thingy, little romance, and he ends up killing someone. The mayor's daughter. It's related to lots of other things. Oh, also, Sejanus gets sent to... Sejanus has his father pay to get him to be a peacekeeper and to get sent to District 12. He just has a death wish throughout the entirety of the story. Sejanus has issues. So Sejanus is kind of doing some shady stuff. He's trying to help the District 12 citizens, but he doesn't realize, he's a little naive, he doesn't realize they're playing him and that he's going to end up in trouble and dead for trying to help. And Coriolanus doesn't help by recording a conversation that he had with him about some of the very anti-capital things that Sejanus had planned to do. He sends this to Dr. Gall, and that comes into play later. So Lucy Gray and Sejanus are 2 of 4 people who are witness to Coriolanus killing the mayor's daughter. So there's immediate panic. Coriolanus is like, if this gets discovered, if these weapons get discovered and my fingerprints are on them, then they're gonna hang me as a peacekeeper for killing the mayor's daughter. So he and Lucy Gray decide that they're gonna leave. But before they do, Sejanus is captured, thanks in no small part to Coriolanus's jabberjay message to Dr. Gall. Coriolanus is present and peacekeeper guarded as his friend, or who he called his friend but wasn't really a friend to, is hung. So Lucy Gray and Coriolanus take off. They're headed up north away from the district to the cabin that Katniss and her dad used to go to when Katniss was a kid. There's some theories floating around about how Lucy Gray and Katniss may be connected, so I'll probably make a separate video about that because they're kind of deep and I kind of want to get into the theory talk. So Coriolanus and Lucy Gray away to the woods, to the cabin, and as they're on the way there, Coriolanus makes a little slip and lets Lucy Gray know that he's killed 3 people. She's only been witness to 2, a tribute in the games and the mayor's daughter. So he tries to save it by saying himself he was the 3rd person. The old Coriolanus is the person that he killed to go be with her in this running away into the woods thing. Again, this is past where I've read in the book, but what I've heard is in this part of the book, we're kind of in his thoughts, hearing that he thinks he's too good for this life on the run in the woods, living off the earth type of thing. He's meant to be something big in the capital. So he's already kind of like not really feeling this. And then as soon as she catches him in that slip and points it out, he starts to be suspicious of her. So they go to the cabin, and at the cabin they find the guns that would tie him to the murder and be the reason that he can't potentially go back to his old life in the capital eventually. He gets rid of them. He's like, thinking this is good. But around that same time, Lucy Gray decides to go out and search for Katniss, the tubers by the lake. So Coriolanus takes his time. Basically, he goes out and into the woods to get rid of the guns in the lake, realizes he hasn't seen Lucy Gray in a while, so he takes a gun and goes in search of her. He finds a scarf that he had given her earlier that was his mother's scarf, and as he goes to pick it up, a snake bites him. I haven't mentioned this, but Lucy Gray's whole thing is snakes. If you've seen the movie, if you're watching this video, you've probably seen the movie or read the book, so you know this information already, but he takes that to mean Lucy Gray tried to poison him and kill him with the snake, so he ends up shooting her. He sees her running and he shoots her. He's not sure what's happened, but then she starts singing The Hanging Tree, and the Mockingjays pick it up and start singing it. So they're all singing it, and he's just like losing his mind because he's like, she's the last piece. She's the last person who can tie him to the murder. The other 2 people, Sejanus and the other guy, are now dead. They were both hanged. So now that he's gotten rid of these guns, she's the last loose end. He's already suspicious that she's going to tell. So he just decides, you know what, scorched earth, I'm just going to shoot everything. So he empties the clip and then he goes to where he thinks he's potentially killed her and just finds her earring. She's nowhere to be found. He never sees her again. He goes back to District 12, gets sent to the Capitol because Dr. Gall has basically, she frames it as like this whole thing, this whole you being a peacekeeper was a test. She's now plucked him back out of District 12 and dropped him back in the Capitol, and he's going to study under her at the university. And he's now heir to the Plinth fortune because Sejanus is dead, but his parents believe that Coriolanus was a good friend to their son. He's got all the money and resources that he needs. He's now going to university and he's being directly mentored by the head game maker. So he's set up. It's kind of little things throughout the story that are supposed to indicate that he has made this turn, that he's gone from this oppressed person to an oppressor. For me, I don't think the movie was as successful with that as the book may be. I haven't gotten to that part yet. But my issue with the movie is the movie has the task of undoing. For us to come to the point where we see Coriolanus Snow as a protagonist, we have to undo what we know about him from the first 4 movies, the first 3 books. So we're already predisposed not to like this person. But in the context of this movie, this story, we're supposed to root for this person. So the movie spends so much time showing us how downtrodden he was and how resourceful he is and like all of these things that would make us want to root for him and want to see him as a protagonist, that for me, it just wasn't quite, I didn't feel like we got enough time either with that section of it, of us seeing him as a potentially altruistic person who wasn't bad from the beginning, but started off one way and then fell. And I also don't think we got to spend enough time in that transition period. Like, what was it that made him, like you see throughout the movie, you see moments where he makes a choice that's really a sneaky choice and could potentially lead to bad things down the line. But for the bulk of the movie, those things end up working out in someone's favor, someone that we're rooting for, Lucy Gray's favor. So he does things, he cheats and he manipulates his suggestions to Dr. Gall in a way that will give him an advantage in keeping Lucy Gray alive. And for his purposes, it's giving him an advantage to winning the Plinth Prize and to going to university. But because it's intrinsically tied with Lucy Gray, it directly causes good things to happen to her. Those things, to me, they felt like they're supposed to be planted seeds of like, ooh, he's not as upstanding as he wants people to believe. But the first part of the movie for me that really was like, ooh, this is probably where he starts to become President Snow, felt like it came too late in the movie. It's when he recorded his and Sejanus' conversation and sent it to Dr. Gall. That was the first time that he did something devious that directly negatively impacted someone, or had the potential to. It just felt like it came too late in the movie for me to believe that like we've spent all this time starting out, unless you're a huge fan and you're wanting to root for Coriolanus because you know the conceit of the story, that's the point. Coming in as someone who like watches these movies and hates President Snow, rightfully, the movie already had to work backwards to undo that, to give us a reason to root for him, but also at the same time lay the seeds of distrust so that we see later on when he becomes President Snow, like we see the progression and we see the downfall. I think in the book, it does a little bit better job of that. And this is where, again, I said earlier, I think this movie should have been split into 2 movies. The book is obviously goes into more depth. You get to be in his head, so you get more character of him. And not saying that when I read the book, I felt like, oh, you know, he's a protagonist, I'm rooting for him. But I hated him less reading the book than I did prior to reading the book. You know, going into the book, I'm like, President Snow, like, why? I'm going to read it because I enjoy the Hunger Games, but like he's a bad guy and you're not going to convince me he's a good guy. But in the book, in the beginning of the book, I saw a fork in the road where he could have gone on to be a good person, but he chose the wrong path. In the movie, I don't feel like there was as obvious of a fork. It just was kind of like, he has to be President Snow by the end of the movie, but also we need you to like him for most of the movie. So we're just going to kind of like string the events Make it as big a spectacle as the Hunger Games have been in every single other movie, except for Mockingjay, obviously. But that was like the central point of the story in the first two. And then storylines came in to support that and then again tail off into Mockingjay. But the central point of the book is not really the Hunger Games. In order for you to have that moment where you do the character work that needs to be done in order for us to even get to the point where we're invested enough to care about what happens in the major point of the book, we have to have that time during the Hunger Games. So for me, I'd think split it up. The first part of the movie, so him being poor, him being oppressed, the fellow students being jerks, him and Sejanus's relationship where it's like they're friends, but he can't act like they're friends for real because he's from the district and capital citizens hate the district citizens and blah, blah, blah. And then show me deeper into this relationship with Lucy Gray and why he is suddenly so invested in saving her and not just winning. Because there's a point where like he's pretty handily beat his fellow students at the game of making their tribute a spectacle. By the time the games are started, he's pretty much cemented as like the top spot of like the tribute who's most rooted for, the tribute who's highest profile is Lucy Gray, and that's because of Coriolanus. So there comes a point where he starts to do things that aren't necessary for him to win the plinth prize, really. It starts to be because he cares about Lucy Gray. But for me, my friend felt differently, so people, you may feel differently. I didn't feel like there was enough there to make me believe he would risk his reputation and his life, literally, to help save her in the games. Like that didn't, in the movie, it didn't really gel for me. And again, that part of the book I had read, so I was able to go along with it and believe it because I just had the background knowledge of having read that part of the book. But I think it could have benefited from not only Coriolanus' character, but that relationship, which is a big part of the second part of the book. Take us through the Hunger Games, make it, you know, a big spectacle instead of a couple of scenes of like chopped up, like, oh, people die here, and now we're kind of done. And then get into that last, it's kind of a Catching Fire style cliffhanger where he's sent to the districts. He's sent to District 12. Like that's a big deal, not only for his character, for his relationship to Lucy Gray, for what we know of him in the future. Like that's a big moment that you could have ended on and people would have been like, what happens next? Like so excited to see the next movie. My friend made a good point about generational differences and like people who are really probably the target audience of this movie now aren't maybe as willing to wait the year or 2 years for another movie to come out. Like they'd rather just have it in a one and done story. And to some degree, I do agree with that. So I guess I can see how that would be an issue and how it would be preferable for the studio and the production companies to just get it over with, get it in one. But I think the story very much could have benefited from being separated into two stories. And then, you know, from the second movie, we pick up with him being in the districts and go through. There's so much good, rich content in that section specifically that is completely cut out in the movie just for time. And I understand it. Like it's character work. It's a lot of slow moving things. So you can't really have that in the second act of leading into the third act of a movie and keep it exciting. It's a lot of setup, which is why it would be great as the beginning part of the second movie. But anyway, yeah, take that through, you know, all of that good character development and relationship development into what he does to Sejanus, him deciding to go away with Lucy Gray, give us more time for us to feel maybe she's suspicious, maybe she's not, and he's just paranoid, and then take that on out to through the end of the story. That all being said, that's my ideal world, but I don't think the movie suffered necessarily. Like, I don't think it's a bad movie because it wasn't split into two movies. I just think the pacing was a little off, maybe. It felt like nothing really had room to breathe before we were at the next thing. Like the Hunger Games end and it's just kind of like, boop, we're done. And you're like, it's the Hunger Games movie. Like, why are we done with the Hunger Games that early? And we just kind of leave it and don't talk about it. Yeah, it was a choice. I'm interested to read the rest of the book and see what else may have been cut out from the end and how it may affect or change my opinion of the movie overall and whether or not it should be split or should have been split into 2 movies. As for the acting, Tom Blythe was great. Very believable President Snow, and I think he handled well the kind of changes that Coriolanus goes through. If people don't have an issue with the transformation from oppressed to oppressor, it's because of his performance. There's a very clear difference between who Coriolanus is at the beginning of the movie and who he is at the end of the movie, and that's purely based on his acting, his performance. He did a great job. Like I mentioned earlier, Viola Davis, amazing, lovely. She's like very crazy. Dr. Gall's a little crazy, but it's so great. It's so fun. She looks like she's having fun too. She and Coriolanus are implied to be the reason that the games are the sick spectacle that they are in the original Hunger Games. You see that in her. She gets delight from this. She was willing to kill all of the tributes to make a point and to test out her new babies, the snakes. So she's a fun character to watch. Casca Highbottom was great. Peter Dinklage was great. He brought his A game. He's a morphling addicted person who you find out knew Coriolanus' father and is one half of the reason that the Hunger Games were started in the first place. He was drunk one night and wrote an assignment on how to punish people and keep them from revolting, basically. He wrote the Hunger Games, and Coriolanus' father took the paper and turned it into Dr. Gall, kind of against his wishes. What I thought was really interesting about his character is he seems like he's set up to be like the ultimate villain. He's in direct opposition to Coriolanus. He hates him, and he does everything he can to undermine him. He's the one who sends him to the districts. So you think like he's the ultimate villain of the story, at least in the context of Coriolanus is the protagonist. The antagonist would be Casca Highbottom. But you find out at the end that his whole goal was to stop the games from happening, period. He disagreed with Dr. Gall about having the students be mentors to the tributes. He didn't want Coriolanus making suggestions to Dr. Gall because he was like, he presented it as like, you're inferior, like this is stupid, you can't be making suggestions to Dr. Gall. But his goal was to make the games as boring as possible, essentially, so that people would stop watching, so that the games would stop. Dr. Gall basically had to work to get the president to continue the games. Like, this was why the 10th Hunger Games were so important to her and why she accepted all these ideas from Coriolanus, is because she had the burden of proof to prove that like the Hunger Games should continue. So that was a really interesting turn for me, because I haven't read that far in the book, and I didn't ever see it that way prior to it being revealed later that his goal was to stop them. I'm like, I just thought he had it out for Coriolanus, and I'm like, I'm not quite sure why, but whatever. That was great. Rachel Zegler, the first thing that caught my attention was her accent. She has like a southern accent in the film, and it kind of caught me off guard for a little bit. I think I settled into it as the movie went on, but it was interesting, to say the least. I think she did great, though. I think she played the character well. I think she probably played, especially things towards the end, played things a little more concretely than the book may have wanted us to think. But that's kind of what you got to do as an actor. You pick an action and stick to it. Yeah, she did good. There are several little moments, Easter eggs, I guess, hidden throughout the movie that tie into the original Hunger Games series. Like I mentioned, Tigress. If you remember from Mockingjay, the fashion designer who ends up helping Katniss and co hide in the Capitol near the end, that's Tigress. That's that tigress, President Snow's cousin tigress. And she's, you know, at the time she looks like a tiger. Like she's had all these modifications done to her body. I'll kind of go into that some more in my theory video, but it's just interesting to see how she's portrayed. Hunter Schafer was great. Lovely. She's not in it for very long, but every moment that she's in it, you feel her presence. She affects the scene in a very intentional and impactful way. But you see that she and Coriolanus are eventually going to split in their morality, because she kind of states her opinion in so many words on Coriolanus' father in the beginning of the movie, and at the end of the movie, after he's made this turn and he is who he is now and who he's going to go on to be, she makes a comment about him looking like his father. Great character, great little moment, or great little Easter egg. There's others like The Hanging Tree, the song. Lucy Gray wrote that song. There's a couple other songs that are peppered throughout that, when I get into my theory video, will strengthen the claim that Lucy Gray and Katniss are connected in some way. The whole thing with President Snow and roses and poisoning all come into play in this film. You kind of see the origins of that. There's all kinds of little moments. Characters, a Heavensbee, so, you know, a relation of Plutarch Heavensbee. All kinds of little things that are, if you've read the books and if you've seen all the movies, you'll pick up one as you watch and kind of just add to the experience of watching the movie. Visually, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the quieter moments, I think, more than I did the big spectacle moments, like the arena and stuff. Because the arena is intentionally not very impressive. It's the 10th Hunger Games, so they're not really doing much. It's just kind of a big stadium, and it gets bombed, you know, partway through the movie, so it just looks like a bunch of rubble and stuff. And that was cool, but it's kind of exists in that nothing space. It's just like, it's a big room. It's probably partly CGI'd, maybe mostly CGI'd. So in the bigger shots, it just kind of feels empty. But in close moments, when the camera's having intimate moments with characters, that's where I think the visuals shine. And I love the play with color, because that's a big thing in the original series too, but that's specifically Lucy Gray's thing. And it stands in stark contrast to the Peacekeepers being in white and District 12 being very gray. And we don't see a whole lot of the Capitol people, but the students are all in red, like their uniforms are red. And then the tributes come in, like they're this bright, vibrant red, and the tributes come in and they're all in varying shades of gray and brown, and you know, it's very drab, and it accentuates the difference in status and in care for the tributes at the time, because this is before tributes were treated well leading up to and the victors who come out of it after the games. So it just kind of, you see that difference. This is, the wounds of the war are still fresh, and it's apparent in the way that color plays between districts and the capital. And it's also very, I don't know, there's a sick irony that comes with this movie being released amidst what's happening in the world right now, specifically in the Middle East. I won't get into that here. I post a lot about it on my personal social media, my Instagram mostly, but it's just very interesting how we're, you know, social media is inundated right now with footage of children dying, being killed violently. And this movie is kind of about that. And it kind of shows the people trying to justify the reasons why it should happen or shouldn't happen. So it's just interesting. Definitely not intentional on the part of the production company, because this stuff wasn't happening in the public eye at the time that the movie was filmed. There's no direct correlation there, but it's interesting to kind of, you see the parallels. The parallels, for me at least, are pretty glaring. Anyway, overall, I'd probably give the movie, this is gonna be tough, maybe a 7 out of 10. I feel like I need a smaller number than 10. 10 feels like a lot, and I feel like I give everything like a 7 or above, but I didn't, maybe a 6.5. Maybe a 6.5. And not because I hated it or I think it's a bad movie. I think it's a good movie. I'd watch it again. I probably will go see it again. I just see areas where it could have been more successful in the story that I think it was trying to tell. And for me, I can't give it higher. So yeah, I think maybe maybe a 6.5 would be fair. I do genuinely recommend it, especially if you love the Hunger Games, because going back and being in that world again is so fun. It makes me, again, regretful that they didn't split it into 2, because I would love to be looking forward to another movie right now. Who knows, maybe Suzanne Collins has another book in this series, and we'll get another book and another movie companion, you know, years down the road. But I loved being back in this world again, and it's reignited my love for the Hunger Games. So I'm now, you know, I'm watching all kinds of videos, and I need to go dig up my books and find the Ballad of Songbirds Snakes so I can finish it finally, and find the rest of them so I can read them all and just kind of delve deep again into that story and see where the connections are in the book as well, not just the movies. Definitely enjoyed it. Definitely recommend it. Keep an eye out for theory videos or other related Hunger Games videos in the future. I will do a series reviewing all of them. I'm really enjoying being back in this world. So thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to leave me a like and a comment letting me know what you would like to see me do next. Let me know if you have seen the movie, if you've read the book, if you're a Hunger Games fan, or if you're not a Hunger Games fan. Let me know if you were excited to see this movie in general, because I was a little nervous, really. I thought it was gonna be really bad and make me mad that they made another movie, but I didn't feel that way. So let me know if you feel similarly, or if you're like, this movie is trash and it doesn't live up to the original 4, so they should have made it blah, blah, blah. Whatever, let me know your thoughts. Seriously, I miss the Hunger Games and I miss the fandom. Subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this. If you click right up here, you can see my latest movie review, and if you click down here, you will probably see another video of me just rambling. I don't know, but that's it for today. I will see you all next time.